talk about. We got a lot to talk about. My name is UGoddess, and this is Black Girl in a Blue State. Thank y'all for joining me. When y'all do eventually join me, I'm thanking you in advance. And if you're watching this on the playback, please leave a comment, drop a comment, leave a like. That thumbs up, but just don't have that big long nail like mine's. Leave a thumbs up. Let me know you were in the building. Let me know you were here. I was gonna put a poll on this particular live just to see like who was watching. Did you actually even watch the vice presidential debate? But I ended up not putting the poll. So please, if you're watching on the playback, or if you're listening to the sound of my voice as we speak, let me know. Did you watch it? Did you care? Were you interested? Are you not interested? Why or why not? Either way. And we're going to talk about it. I did this with the presidential debate between Harris and Trump, where we broke down every single question asked. So this could be potentially like a hour-long show. So, you know what I'm saying? Get a beverage. You never know what could be in this cup, but get yourself a beverage. Sit and stay. We're going to be here for maybe about an hour going over every question asked in the vice presidential debate. But I need to wait until I have a little bit of an audience so that I'm not talking to myself. So I'm going to wait. And I'm going to babble a little bit until I know y'all want to get started. You know what I'm saying? But how are y'all feeling about the vice presidential nominees? Do they matter? I mean, we know they matter because if, God forbid, something were to happen to the president, this person would become the president. No ifs, ands, or buts. There would be no vote. There would be no nothing. He would just be the president. So, yeah, these people are important. Who they are, what they are, why they are is all very important. We need to know who these people are and if we want them to be the number two in the White House. If you like the president and don't like the vice president, what do? Or vice versa. Like, I'm pretty sure when you're voting for president, like you're also taking in consideration who his VP pick is or who her VP pick is. I can say that now. Who her VP pick is, because who her VP pick is or his VP pick is matters. It matters because even if something doesn't happen to the sitting president, we don't want anything happening to anybody. But God forbid something happened to the president, we know the vice president would move into office. But what if nothing happens to the president? All is well, and they serve their one term or maybe even two terms. After they get out of office, there's a good chance, unless your name is Mike Pence, there's a good chance that you're going to want to now get a piece of the action. You're going to want to be the top dog. You were vice president for 4 to 8 years, and now the president can't run no more. You don't got to be his number two no more. You feel like, hey, I was there for 8 years rocking it out with y'all. It's my turn now. Now I want to run. Everybody that's vice president doesn't necessarily have to be president, but, they have a good front row seat, I would assume, to what it is to be president, and then they can make like a educated decision from there. Do I really want to get myself involved in all of this, or do I want to just Mike Pence my way out of this? Let's act like this never happened. Like I was never there. It wasn't me. It says a lot when the vice president doesn't want to run for president. Were they just comfortable with being number two? Like that was good enough? Did they not want to keep going and rise to the ascension of power, the ultimate power of being president of what they say is the greatest nation in the universe, the greatest nation, right here, the United States of America. I don't know if that's a self-declared title or if there was a vote. Okay, so last night's debate. When Texas, oh, hey, Texas Repo. First and foremost, hi, how are you? He ran for president when? After Trump's term? Did he? It must have been a very short run. It wasn't that long ago. I'm surprised I don't remember that. I do remember him being on the stage with all the with the vice presidential candidate. Okay, gotcha. Gotcha. That totally slipped my mind. That totally slipped my mind. Didn't Obama run against McCain? Or that was the first time around? Was that the first 2000 and when was Obama president? 2008. Who did he run against in 2008? He ran against McCain, right? And then who did he run against in 2012? Yeah, 2012. Tonight we're here. You guys remind me because obviously I forgot. How long ago was that? 12 years. Romney. Yes, sir. Mitt Romney. Oh, he was a character. He was a character. He's quiet lately. He's quiet. He says his little piece. You know what I'm saying? He gives the media a quote or two here and there, but he's been sort of quiet. But Mitt Romney, and John McCain. Okay, guys, we're going to talk about the VP Love Fest, which took place last night. The Love Fest. I mean, how many of you had issue with the way how Waltz and Pence went above and beyond to sort of prove to us, the audience, that they can be cordial, well-behaved, well-mannered, polite, agreeable. Like, it was a little much for me personally. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying I want to see the opposite of that. I don't want to see the opposite of that, but the syrup was a little thick on the pancakes last night. Romney is a rhino. The syrup was a little thick last night. I needed several bottles of water to get through. It was a little sweet on both sides. I don't know if that was campaign strategy on both sides, where their strategist said, look, you got to get out there and you got to show the world that you can be polite and that you have good manners and that you're not going to interrupt and you're not going to call names and you're going to be so nice. Did I say Pence? Okay, if I said Pence, it's because we were... Hi, Sherry, first and foremost. Thank you for stopping by. We were just talking about Pence, so I probably still had Pence on my mind. Waltz and Vance. But you can see how I could get that mixed up, right? It was a little sweet. Republican. Yeah, I knew what that meant. Republican in name only. But he doesn't walk the walk, in other words. Republicans probably don't want him in the club. They probably hold secret parties and he doesn't get invites. That reminds me of Lego Batman, when Batman went to go see Superman and he was like, Superman's always home alone. He's always by himself. He's a loner. He doesn't have any friends. And when he rang the doorbell, Superman was in there having a big ass party and Batman was not invited. The Justice League was in there. Everybody was having a ball. Lego Batman, y'all. That's one of my favorite kid movies. I don't even know if that is considered a kid's movie. So it was like a VP Love Fest last night with Waltz and Vance. And like I said, I wonder if that was something that they came up with together or separately, because they seem to be on the same page when it came to their demeanor, their decorum, and the way that they would talk to each other and respond to each other. Almost every response, and obviously I'm exaggerating a little bit, but almost every response was like, I agree with you. I see exactly where you're coming from. Yes, I'm with you on that, but let me tell you why I'm not. But almost every answer seemed to start off with, I agree with you. Yes, you have some very good points, like a compliment, just some kind of like very complimentary responses. It was just very strange. It was very strange. Texas Repost says Vance had to debate Tampon Tim and both the moderators. Those moderators, in my humble opinion, who am I? I'm just a black girl in a blue state. Those moderators were useless. And it's sad that I have to say that, because they were women and, women empowerment, whatever, but they were useless. All right, so we're going to go over every question. We have about an hour to do this, so let's go. So the very first question was Israel. Of course, Israel's on everybody's mind. What's your take on Israel? What do you want to say about Israel? And I swear for everything, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not trying to make anybody laugh. The first words out of Vance's mouth when she asked him about Israel was, I was raised in a middle-class family. I almost fell out my chair, because that we kind of kid and joke and poke fun at Kamala Harris for doing that, right? Like every time you ask her anything, what'd you eat for breakfast this morning? I was raised in a middle-class family. My mother didn't buy a house until I was a teenager. And my best friend was sexually abused and I had to bring her in. It's like, I just asked you what you had for, oh, okay. Or how about them Cowboys, Kamala? I was raised in a middle-class family. And Vance literally started the night off like that. I thought that was hilarious. Because Republicans should know better than to do oh yeah, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that, Texas Repo, I promise. This is a free-for-all. I am an equal opportunity criticizer. Promise. I promise. We're going to get to that. But Vance started. He started it. He was asked the question and he started, I was raised in a middle-class family. But anyway, he did proceed to touch on the subject of Israel. And he basically said, in very basic terms, it's up to Israel. Whatever they want to do, we got their back. We support our allies when they're fighting the bad guys. If Izzy wants to thump, we thumping with him. That's basically what he said. And then he says he agrees with Trump that we have to show peace through strength. So not peace through being nicey and let's see if we can talk about this and let's shake hands. No, peace is by showing strength. And I kind of agree with that. Sometimes you got to put your foot down and you got to show people who's the boss. If they're trying to mess with you, if they're messing with your integrity and playing games with your life, yeah, you want to be peaceful, but you got to be peaceful through strength. Waltz's rebuttal was an attack on Trump, obviously, and he talked about Iran and how they are closer to nuclear weapons than ever before because of Trump. And our allies all consider Trump to be very fickle. They know, our allies know, that the person who compliments him the most will get his attention. And so that was the way Waltz answered, and then Vance's rebuttal was Trump makes the world more secure. So, and of course, Vance says after that, Trump makes the world more secure, and then he went into the key campaign talking point of the Republican side, especially for these debates and ads and things of that nature, is the key talking point is your running mate has been in power for 3 years, ... Like, why hasn't she done blank? So like I said, I really do believe that that talking point is very smart, very effective, and they should use it more. I mean, we're running out of time, but they should be using that a lot more, as much as they can. And I don't think they've used it enough. But then again, Trump hasn't had a chance to really have her as an opponent for very long, because she's got her key talking points and she's got her strategic campaign rhetoric ready to go. And unfortunately, they haven't been contenders for very long, so he hasn't really been able to use that. But I'm starting to hear it a little bit more, and Vance used it a couple key times last night. So I think it's effective to say, why are you saying you're going to do all these things? Why do you keep talking about the future? You are the present. You are now. You're in there now. So why should we trust you to do this later if you couldn't get it done in the last 3.5 years? And just like that, the topic of Israel, poof, went away. And the next question was Hurricane Helene, which is a very important topic. Obviously, my thoughts and prayers do go out to everyone and anyone affected by Hurricane Helene. I'm up on the Northeast coast. So as far as hurricanes are concerned, we get the rain, the wind, and some cloudy days, and we're like, oh, Florida has a hurricane again. We're not really affected too much by natural disasters up in the Northeast, obviously. And we just expect that everyone's just going to come out, and survive these storms because they're so used to them and they happen every year. They're expected to happen. And Helene just really, really threw me for a loop. Like, over 180 dead. The death toll is just rising. And North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina, shout out to Asheville. Shout out to everybody that's affected by the hurricane. So that was the very next topic on the list. My heart and my thoughts and prayers definitely are with you. I have family in the area and all that good stuff. Trust me. So, of course, the moderators used this as a chance to talk about climate change. And they said scientists say that climate change is the cause of more rainfall. And, of course, where there's rain, there are floods. So 7 in 10 Americans believe that we should take steps to reduce climate change. What is your response? And Vance says, these people need their government to do their job. And when Trump is in office, he will take care of them. Trump supports clean air and water. There's an idea that carbon emissions cause climate change. He says, okay, let's pretend climate change is real. Well, there's this idea that carbon emissions contribute to climate change. So if that's the case, the answer is more American manufacturing. So, there is a link to what he's talking about in his way. More American manufacturing, because we manufacture the cleanest out of the entire world. And then he says if Kamala cared, she would invest in American workers, but she does the opposite. So the hurricane is Kamala's fault. Pence isn't the border czar. Oh, Sherry says, what did Pence do when he was vice president? And Texas Repo says, but Pence wasn't the border czar. Landlord from Alabama has slid into the chat. Thank you for joining us. Is Alabama affected by Hurricane Helene at all? I don't think I've heard Alabama in the news. But anyway, anyone that's being affected by the storms, please stay safe. And I wish you all well. So basically, he blames the hurricane on Kamala because she doesn't care about American manufacturing. Obviously, I'm being facetious. Walsh says, Senator Vance has said in the past that there was a climate change problem, and Trump calls climate change a hoax. And we all know that he calls global warming a hoax. Because he says global warming means that it's too hot, but then they realized the temperature was going down. They had to change the name from global warming to climate change to cover their you-know-whats. And Walt says climate change is very real. We are producing more gas, oil, and clean energy than ever before, and reducing our impact is critical. We can do that as we create jobs and become an energy superpower for the future. And then he says, then we can think about mitigating these disasters. So they both sort of found a way to circle the conversation back to American jobs, even though the question was about climate change and the climate crisis. Waltz did say, your president, your boss, your running mate says that climate change is a hoax, but you are on record saying that climate change is an actual issue. So, that's how he started off his rebuttal, and that's what we kind of need to remember. And then Vance was asked to respond to whether or not Trump called the climate change a hoax, and he didn't answer that. He did not answer that. But we all know. I mean, Trump is not shy about saying that climate change is a hoax. So I'm really not sure why Vance didn't just say, hell yeah, he thinks it's a hoax. But maybe he just didn't want to open that can of worms. I'm not sure. But Trump is literally on record saying that he doesn't believe in global warming. But he didn't answer the question. Instead, what he did was basically repeated what he had said before, that Kamala doesn't care about American manufacturing. Then Walt says, we are producing more gas and oil. So he's repeating himself. How do we respond? Kamala is thinking ahead by weatherproofing and contributing to infrastructure laws that were passed, which will protect lakefronts and create jobs. So sort of repeating himself about creating jobs. I don't think that was a very strong round for either one of them. Climate change, not really a strong round. However, Vance sort of started off kind of strong when he was talking about the correlation between American manufacturing jobs. If in fact climate change is real, then we should be looking more into creating more jobs here in the United States. And just like that, climate change as a topic disappears. And now we are on to dun dun dun, immigration and deportation. Trump's favorite subject. His favorite subject, and mine, actually. Okay, so Birmingham is not being affected by the hurricane, but the rest of Alabama is. Prayers goes out to you and your state. Some of Trump's statements are so outlandish that any respectable person can't stand behind some of it. Yeah, sometimes Vance has to just be like, because he's a really smart guy. He's young. He's 40 years old or something like that. And he knows that sometimes Trump says some outlandish things. He knows that. I think even Texas Repo would agree with that. Get rid of ceiling fans, gas stoves, etc. I mean, there are lots of things that we as standalone citizens can do to not contribute. Even if you think, this is how I feel about global warming, even if you think it's not real. What if we did things to make sure that it doesn't happen? So Damon, thank you for stopping by. And he says climate change, they're talking about terraforming Mars. I don't know what terraforming means. I don't think I've ever heard that term before. Can you explain? I know terra means, earth or land, firmament. So just like that, we're on to immigration. You can explain that to me, Damon. I'll come back to you. I promise you I will. So the moderator asks Vance, would you deport families who the parents are here illegal, but the children were born in the States? You know what I'm saying? So are you for separating families? Like the parents are illegal, the children are legal citizens. Would you rip the parents away from the children and send them back to their countries? And Vance says, making it habitable. Thank you. Terraforming. I learned something new. Thank you, Damon. Basically meaning that, yes, thank you. Yep. I just learned something new. I've never heard that term before. How do you feel about ripping parents away from their children? Illegal parents, immigrants that are here illegally. And there's a big difference between an legal immigrant and an illegal immigrant. And sometimes Trump does not make that distinction when he's talking about immigration. And that's some really scary stuff. when he does that. And I can't stand it when he does that. He's really got to try better and do better. Um, but this is about Vance. This is about his running mate. His answer to that question was, we've got to stop the bleeding. The floodgates are open because of Kamala. And then he starts talking about fentanyl and record levels of opioids coming in. I mean, just drugs just being shoveled in by the boatload. Build the wall, re-implement deportation. It's 25 million illegal aliens. Start with the criminals. And there, see, he made a distinction between illegal aliens, immigrants, and criminals that are illegal aliens in this country. There's a difference between all those three things. They're not all just one lump of people. And he wants to make it harder for illegal aliens to work and make it harder for them to take fair wages away from United States citizens. He then says the Department of Homeland Security has lost 320,000 children, just lost them. Basically, they're unaccounted for. Some of them are lost to sex trafficking, drug mules. They might be with their families, and it's all Kamala's fault. If she was a real leader, she would say, I screwed up. Let's go back to Trump's policies. He did not answer the question, but he gave us a lot of things that we need to, if we're interested, fact check. Let's fact check. Let's just make sure that he's not just saying numbers that are not true or numbers from old reports. That's another thing that politicians tend to do on both sides, any side. This is not a shot at one party or another. This is a shot at politicians in general. They will spew off numbers off the top of their head and sound so well informed and sound so knowledgeable and sound so trustworthy, because when someone can rattle off statistics like that, they've got to know what they're talking about, right? And then you come to find out that the statistics that they were feeding you were from reports from 5 years ago or reports from 11 years ago. And they're not relevant to the society we're living in today or the numbers that we're looking at to answer the questions that are being posed in this moment. Don't give me numbers from a 2021 report, because first and foremost, well, Biden was president in 2021, but don't give me a report from 2021 when I'm talking to you about problems in 2024. So much can happen in 3 years. But these are the numbers that he was rattling off. So I'm just giving you the numbers fresh out of the mouth of JD Vance. And it's up to us if we're interested and we want to know, is this true that there are 320,000 lost immigrant children that are just like not on the books? The Department of Homeland Security has no answer for where they are or what happened to them. Did they go back to their country? Are they still here? Apparently, they just don't know. But the question was, are you for deporting illegal parents if they are already here and have built a life here in this country, had a couple of kids, bought the house, paid the taxes, but they're not here legally? Are you for deporting them? I will say that he did say, let's start with the criminals, but I think that sort of alludes to maybe he's saying deport them all, because we all know that that's how Trump feels. And Trump is not shy. He's not going to play this little dance of, let me give you this flowery speech. He may go on tangents, but he's not going to pretend. He's going to say, ship them all. Get rid of them all. Damon says, I don't blame them. America's a great hustle. Free housing, medical public schools, food stamps. The American women who need housing, who have no kids, have to wait behind the mag with kids because they are first priority. I believe, and I don't know if this is a federal law or a state law, but if I'm not mistaken, when you are here as an immigrant, you are not allowed, if I'm not mistaken, to get certain benefits from the states. There might be some federal laws out there that might protect them from certain things, but they're not allowed to just come here and get on welfare. if I'm not mistaken. But that might be a state by state basis. Um, one family can cost up to 100. Oh yeah, definitely. It's expensive to live. Of course, terrorists and criminals crossing our borders unvetted. It's sad. I've been to the border. I agree. As long as we're talking about terrorists and criminals crossing the border. You see how you laid that out and specified who you're talking about? You're not just talking about anyone who wasn't born here, because we do allow people to come here from other countries and start a life here. We do. That's not illegal. Um, Walt says, actually, Vance, let me correct you, Fancy Pants Vance. The last 12 months, we've seen a decrease in fentanyl deaths, not an increase, my friend. So there goes another thing where it's like, who's telling the truth? Vance might not be intentionally lying, but he might be giving us numbers that are not accurate to today. Because according to the CDC, and I looked this up myself, the numbers have gone down. So Vance stands on a stage in front of millions and millions of Americans in the middle of an election year and says that fentanyl deaths are up, but it's just not true. It's down according to the CDC. And listen, not everything ever gets reported. Not all numbers are accurate, but if we're relying on the CDC to tell us when deaths are up, we got to trust the CDC when they're telling us that deaths are down. You know what I'm saying? Wall says Harris has prosecuted drug gangs in California. She's the only one who can say that. Again, one of Harris's I think, effective talking points by being able to harken back to her history as a prosecutor in California, as an attorney general. She can say, I'm the only person that has locked these people up. I'm the only person who has prosecuted these people. I'm the only person who's on the other side of the law versus Trump, who is a convicted felon. You know, she can use those words against him. So Waltz obviously borrowed that from her. He says the border patrols are the experts. The law would have brought in, okay, now he goes talking about this law. You know, Kamala keeps talking about this law that she and, it was a bipartisan law, both sides of the aisle. They worked really hard on it. They stayed up all night writing it. And Trump picked up the phone and made one phone call and said, don't pass that law because I want to run on immigration. That's the story that's being told. I wasn't there. I can't tell you if it's true or false. I'm just saying that's what I heard. So Waltz is talking about that and saying if only Trump would have let them vote that bill into law, it would have gotten them 1,500 new border agents. But Trump wanted to run on a problem. Kamala's been saying that a lot lately. He wanted to run on a problem instead of fixing it. So Trump, I believe he has sort of denied, he slightly denied that that's true, but he doesn't really respond to that accusation very much, which kind of leads me to believe that there's some truth to that he might have picked up the phone and made a phone call and said, don't vote that border, that bipartisan border law into law. I don't want it because I want to be able to run on it. I don't think he would say that out loud, but that would be the reason why he wouldn't want them to fix it. Because if they fix it, then he won't be able to talk about immigration. You know what I'm saying? Damon, oh yeah, Damon, I read that. Texas says you sound very smart and educated. Thank you, Texas. No, no. Is that a backhanded compliment? Do you think I'm a fan of Candace Owens or... Probably not. I'm a fan of any young Black woman, I guess, that's educated and doing something great with her life. But and I'll leave it at that. But Van says, what Tim says doesn't pass the smell test. Record number of illegal crossings, fentanyl. Now she cares about the legislation. The only thing she did was undo 94 Trump executive actions and opened back up the border. So listen, Kamala's got to answer to some of this border stuff because she was the border czar and she has been answering to it. You know what I'm saying? And one of those answers has constantly been We tried to pass a law and Trump blocked it. He blocked it because he wanted to run on the problem rather than fix it. So that's her answer to that. If you ask her, if I pick up a phone and call her and ask her right now, why haven't you done something about the border? That's what she's going to say. The moderator stays on this topic because this is a hot topic. All that other stuff, Israel, what else were we talking about? Hurricane Helene, nah. But immigration, oh yeah, baby. We're gonna stay on this topic for a little bit longer. More than 50% of Americans actually agree with mass deportation. This is the moderator saying this. So Walt's response to this is, we could come together and solve this if we didn't let Trump continue to make an issue. Continue to make it an issue. By standing with Trump, Vance is turning this into a talking point, and all they're doing is villainizing and dehumanizing human beings. And then he references Springfield. They blame migrants for everything. And again, like I said, that's how I feel. Like, we have to be really careful when we're talking about this subject, because what happens is when you just say, get rid of all the immigrants, they're taking all your jobs, they're taking Black jobs, they're taking Latino jobs, they're criminals, they're drug mules, they will rape and kill you, you won't even be able to walk your dog at night. There are people out there, maybe not you and me, because me and you, we're a little bit smarter than that, but there are people out there that will hear that message, and all it takes is a little hate in their heart. You understand what I'm saying? And then things could get real ugly real quick. Vance says, we need to empower our Border Patrol agents to let them do their jobs. He said in Springfield, you have bad schools, no housing, and it's because of the millions of immigrants who came in. Well, we know, by the way, the moderator stopped him and said, well, she didn't stop him, but she did say in between the back and forth between he and Waltz, that the Haitians in Springfield that we keep hearing about that are eating the dogs and cats and the geese, let's not forget the geese, they're eating the geese. They are there legally. So if you weren't following this story and you weren't really sure what's going on in Springfield, but you just keep hearing about immigrants in Springfield, and how they were bussed in and just dropped off in the middle of a parking lot with nowhere to go, and they just fell upon the city like zombies and an attack in a horror movie. That's not how it happened, but the Haitians that are there actually do have legal status. The mayor of Springfield, Ohio, where this large Haitian immigrant population resides, is a Republican mayor who has come out and spoke on their behalf and said that they are operating productive citizens of his city, and he really wishes that, all of this was not happening. But Vance says to the moderator, yeah, they have legal status. Okay, cool. But it's because they fill out these applications and they're just granted like asylum or whatever. So it's not like they stood in line, they did what they had to do to get the legal status. They waited years and years, like a lot of legal immigrants that came here and, did it the right way and things like that. Like, they just filled out this is CVP1 application. And he says, I quote, it grants you legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. Not a Kamala Harris open border wand. Like, they really are sticking it to her when it comes to this border. They're basically saying it's all her fault. And she took her wand and she went down there to the border and said, let the gates open and let them all in. Like when Jesus was like, let the children come unto me. She said, let the criminals, the illegal alien criminals, come unto me. And she let that gate wide open for them all to come in. Let's read some comments. Raise New Life, how are you? Thank you for stopping by. Damon says migrants in New York City and luxury rooftop apartments. They could have went to an American family. How could How are the migrants, because it's expensive to live in New York. You don't got to tell me twice. How are they taking housing, luxury rooftop housing away from an American family? Luxury rooftop housing. Landlord is thanking everyone for watching. Oh, he's just doing his job as a moderator. We appreciate that. He's asking if y'all could please leave me a like if you like the content. If you don't like the content, let me know. Dr. Bishara Wilson says, didn't the owner of the cat in Springfield end up finding her cat in the basement after claiming that the lady ate it? Oh, Dr. Wilson, I'm going to look into that. Ray's New Life says, which party does she think runs every single inner city race ghetto? Inner city race ghetto. Springfield is no different than what is happening across the whole country in a bunch of towns. Okay, are you talking about immigration in cities? I mean, all inner city. What do you mean by ghetto? Because, every state has cities and towns, right? So, what do you mean by that? Texas, my guy, says, how did they get that legal status? Yeah, I answered that one. And they were flown in by Harris. Well, they had to go somewhere, but they were legal, though. They were legal. Can we admit that they were legal? Ray's New Life thinks that I'm brainwashed. And Texas says, illegal migrants. You should probably get it right. Okay. All right. So it's not illegal immigrants. It's illegal migrants versus illegal immigrants. Wall says, okay, so Vance says the Kamala Harris open border wand, which I found to be hilarious, and that made me laugh. But then Walt sort of shuts him down and says, these laws, that CVP1 application that he was talking about, that he's basically saying that, it's Kamala that opened the borders and let them all come in. And like Texas Repo was saying, she had them flown in and dropped off in the middle of Springfield, Ohio. Those laws have been on the books since 1990. Like, maybe she is keeping the laws on the books, but she certainly didn't write those laws. And just like that, we're off of immigration and we're on to the deficit, you guys. What's up with the deficit? Talk to us about your plans for the economy. Waltz answers and says, Trump cuts taxes for the rich, which increases national debt by $8 trillion. And now he wants to put a sales tax on everything we bring in. We want to tax the rich. So Trump wants to give tax breaks to the rich, and the Democrats want to tax the rich so that they pay a little bit more because they have a lot more to give. Vance says Harris has had the opportunity to enact all these policies, but instead middle class life is unaffordable. And yeah, middle class life pretty much is unaffordable. I don't know who you blame that on, because it takes a while for these things to happen. It does not happen overnight. And in a lot of ways, it does not happen during the course of one presidential term. It takes a while for inflation and all of these middle class issues that we are facing in the economy to come to fruition. Landlord says, Ray, are you okay? Oh, okay. Are we name calling? We don't do name calling, because if we do that, I have moderators that might get rid of you or put you in timeout. Okay, so let's behave. What do you think is stopping the Democrats from making your life better now? But the thing is, I don't want the Democrats to make my life better, sir. I don't want the Republicans to make my life better. I want to be able to do things for my own self, and the government do what governments do. You know what I'm saying? Nobody said I was looking for the Democrats to do anything for me. The Inflation Reduction Act raised inflation, period. We were deflationary Trump's last 18 months. And facts and reality is name calling. No, facts and reality is not name calling. So if you were name calling, I don't think my moderator would accuse you of doing something that you're not doing. So just watch what you say and how you say it. That's all. And we can continue to have this conversation. I don't have a problem with that. Just, my moderator is watching. So, So again, Vance uses the talking point. She's had opportunities to do something about it. And then they were talking about how the economists, those top economists and the strategists are all watching and saying that his policies, Trump's policies. Well, I don't have time to scroll up and read, Ray. I'm doing a show. Would add to the deficit. And that's when Vance says, well, we can't trust these people. They have degrees and they have a lot of common education, but they have no common sense. And so he says, during Trump, we saw an economic boom like never before. Vote for us and you'll be able to live the American dream again. Very good right there. Because again, people are going to vote with their wallets. They're going to vote with the memory of how much money they had in 2016 versus the amount of money they have right now. That's just the regular Joe Schmo that's not into all this politics, not following every little thing that Trump says and every little thing that Harris does. He's just going to vote with his pocket. We sometimes tend to forget, sometimes it seems so long ago, it's a little thing called COVID. And COVID is what happened right at the end of Trump's presidency, right? So those numbers between 2019 and 2021, who do you sort of blame those numbers on? The unemployment rate. Of course, the employment rate spiked during 2020 and 2021. Nobody was working. Well, a lot of us were not working. Some of us were. Some of us were essential workers. Some of us still went to work, but a lot of us didn't. And then there were all those stimulus checks that came in the mail, right? And all those PPP loans that were coming in the mail. So between 2019 and 2021, who do we blame? Do we blame Trump because he was technically still president? Or do we blame President Biden? Sometimes I even forget he's president because Trump was doing a speech the other day and he was like, where is he? I was like, good question. Where is he? I forgot about that man. Vance says the experts are wrong. They're wrong sometimes. They be wrong about stuff. Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say, we're not listening to y'all. Okay, we're going to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. We want our drugs. We don't want our drugs being made by nations who hate us. We're going to make our own drugs. We're going to do our own shit right here in our own USA. And we're going to stop outsourcing all this stuff. And Waltz kind of had a good comeback where he says, Trump is always saying you can't trust the experts, you can't trust the scientists, you can't trust the economists, anyone who sort of says anything that's a negative about him or against his policies, you can't trust them. And then Walt says, well, if you need heart surgery, you listen to a doctor. You don't listen to former President Trump. So points were made there. Did I read what was in the Inflation Reduction Act? No, but I will. I will. I'm all about that research. The moderator says the voters do trust Trump on the economy more. So these moderators were just, why were they there? Vance and Waltz could have did this by themselves. These moderators were so useless. Walt says we need to have fair trading partners. Vance says you're pretending Trump didn't do good things just so you can back up your boss. All right, so the moderator says moving right along. Let's talk about your personal qualifications. Waltz, it's time for you to talk to the people. Why did you lie? Why did you lie? And say that you were in Tiananmen Square and all this other stuff and say that you were fighting wars and you didn't do none of that. And this is when Walt said, I swear to God, I grew up in a small town. It's like the politician go-to sentence starter. It's the politician go-to sentence starter when the heat is on and they don't want to answer a question. They always default to, I grew up in a small town. I grew up with a single mother. I grew up in a middle-class family. And that's literally how he started answering this question. Why did you lie? And then he says he joined the National Guard when he was 17. And by joining the National Guard, he was able to have access to the GI Bill, which allowed him to become a teacher. And he says, my community knows who I am. And then eventually, after all of that, he says he misspoke. He misspoke. He was in China or China adjacent, but no, he was not in Tiananmen Square fighting with big guns blazing. That's not true. He misspoke. And the moderator let him off and said, all right, well, we'll leave it at that. There was no rebuttal. There was no back and forth about it. He said, my people know who I am. I misspoke, but I was in China during that summer. I just wasn't there at that specific time. The moderator then turns to Vance and says, you once called Trump Hitler and said that he was unfit to be prez. So what up with that? Why should we now trust you? I'm going to take a pause because I see I have a new viewer in the chat. Thank you, Mama Ree, for stopping by. She says, let's be respectful. What about all immigrants that work, pay taxes, cannot collect depending on residency status? Where are all the taxes? Where do all those taxes go that are collected every year? And that's, I think it's really important, Mama. Thank you for stopping by again. That when we were on the immigration topic, we talked about that. That we know that not every immigrant is a criminal. Not every immigrant is here illegally. Some of these people come to this country and really are here to start a new life and make a better life for themselves and their families. And yes, they do work and they do contribute to society. They do pay taxes. They're not on welfare. They don't get food stamps. None of that stuff. So we need to be able to separate the good from the bad, please. And you have a very good question there as well, because they are sometimes... They can pay those taxes, boy. They'll take those taxes, won't they? Won't they? All right. And just like that. Oh, I'm sorry. Vance was asked about calling Trump Hitler in the past, right? You called him Hitler in the past. You said he was unfit, but now you're his running mate. Awkward. You know what I'm saying? And Vance was like, I was wrong about him. He actually had a pretty well put together answer. He probably saw this coming from a mile away, right? So he was prepared for this. And he says, listen, I was wrong about him because I was listening to the media. Good one. Good answer. I'm sorry. A good answer is a good answer. Trump hates the media and fake news. You know what I'm saying? So what a great way to take a shot at the media and plus explain away why in the past you are on record calling Trump such vile names and criticizing him to the point where you're saying he's unfit to be president. And he blames it on the media. The reason why I said those things because I was listening to y'all. I was listening to you. I was misinformed. You feel what I'm saying? So we get off of that topic and we get on to abortion. So immigration and abortion, them the two right there. Those are the two, right? Abortion in the 9th month. Trump has been talking about this at every chance he gets. Any chance he gets in front of a microphone, he's going to tell you that the Democrats want to be able to kill babies in the 9th month of pregnancy. He's going to tell you that they want to do an abortion after the baby is born. And it sounds insane that he's ever been allowed to say this more than once. But not only has he been allowed to say this more than once, he has said it over and over and over again. And I guarantee you, there are people out there in the world, because they love him so much and believe in him so much, that are listening to his every word and believe him and believe that this is true. The 9th month abortion thing does not exist. It just doesn't. That's like murder. It's murder. But we're going to talk about it. What's going on with this abortion in the 9th month thing? And Walt says it's not true. That's not what the law says. I've actually looked up the law and I've told you guys what the law says, and I'll repeat it, and I will tell you what the law says and why Trump could still run on this as an abortion issue without lying. He literally could still say some of the things that he wants to say without exaggerating and lying. Um, Walt says Trump brags about overturning Roe v. Wade, but in Minnesota, we trust women, we trust the doctors. And then Vance, in a desperate attempt, in the most desperate attempt to appear relatable and to try to get on women's good sides, I guess, he says, where I grew up at, I knew a lot of girls who had abortions. Like, what? Where the hell did you grow up at? How do you know so many girls that have had abortions, my friend, while you were growing up? Like, come on, Vince. Politicians just try so hard sometimes and they just really overdo it. But he says where I grew up at, I know a lot of girls that had abortions. And then he very honestly well, I don't know if it was sincerely, but appeared to be sincere when he said that Republicans need to do a better job on this topic. He knows that this topic, they're not winning on this topic. They're just not. They need to earn the trust of the American people. He does want to support fertility treatments. He does want to support women and give them more options. And but he says again, he wants the states to be able to make these decisions. And the problem with the states, the problem with abortion being in the hands of the states is that if you end up living in a state that says, nope, we ain't doing that, then if you ever need this kind of fertility care, or if you need to terminate your pregnancy for medical reasons or whatever reasons, you won't be able to do it in the state where you live at. And that's not okay. You know, I think when some people think about abortions, they just think about people just going out with willy-nilly, just having unprotected sex and just, oops, I'm pregnant, get an abortion. Oops, I'm pregnant, let me get an abortion. Oops. And that's, you guys, we know that that's not the case. Someone with a good head on their shoulder knows that that's not the case. There's lots of reasons why, unfortunately, women have to or may be forced to end a pregnancy. So let's talk about this 9th month thing. This law in Minnesota that Walt's, he's the governor there and it's his law, and it's a law in his state. And what it's saying is if the abortion somehow didn't work, I've never heard of this. I don't have any experience with this, but I'm just imagining there's a time or a world or a scenario where a woman is terminating a pregnancy and for some reason it didn't work and the baby lived. There are laws in Minnesota that say, there was a law that said you have to save the baby. And then there's a law in Minnesota that says you don't have to save the baby. If it lives by accident, but you were trying to abort it, you don't have to go into life-saving procedures to save the baby. That's what this is about. That's that killing babies after they're born. That's what Trump is talking about. And he says it, of course, in this graphic way because it sticks with you, number one, right? And number two, it sounds worse, and it'll make people look at the Democrats like they're absolutely insane. Why are you killing babies after they're born? But that's what that law refers to. So how you feel about that personally in your life, that's a personal thing. Whether or not, you would do it, like Walt said last night, that is between the mother and the doctor. That is between the parents of that baby and the doctor. And the government should not determine whether or not, the baby lives or dies. That should be a personal choice and a personal decision. But now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned and abortion is in the hands of the states, if you live in a state that does not support pro-choice, you can be in a lot of trouble. And actually, guys, women have actually died because they could not get the medical treatment and the care that they needed because their state didn't allow it. And that's not okay. That's not okay. I don't care how you feel about abortion, but not receiving medical care because your doctor could be arrested for giving it to you sounds a little bit absurd, does it not? So that's abortion. And then they talk about gun control, of course. Gun control, we have to talk about it. You know, Vance says, when asked, should parents be held responsible when their kids shoot up a school? And Vance says sometimes yes, sometimes no. The details matter. I agree with that. You know, are they just leaving guns hanging around this, you know, the house, or were the guns locked up and the kid got to it? Did they know that their child had mental health issues? Things of that nature. Were they trying to help the child? Was he in, you know, was he in a therapist's care and things of that nature? How did he get the gun, basically? That would let me decide whether or not the parent should be charged. And that's how Vance feels. Walt says, of course, the Democrats stand for red flag laws, background checks. The Republicans won't even let them research data because Republicans are so hard on the Second Amendment that they're like, we don't want you coming anywhere near the Second Amendment. And I love it when Walt says, we don't want to take your guns. Like, I truly and honestly believe that. I know that there is a slippery slope theory out there that if we let them take an inch, they're going to take a mile and eventually they're going to come for our guns. But I just don't see that happening. I just feel like if you're a responsible gun owner and you want to own guns, fine, no problem. But you got to go through a couple of little steps and processes and applications and a waiting period and a background check. And now here you go. You can have your gun. What's so bad about that? How is that taking your guns? It's just making you wait a little bit longer. Why do you have to have the gun now? Why can't you wait 72 hours? And then they start talking about schools. So Vance says more security in schools. And Walt says no, he doesn't want his kids going to a school that looks like a prison. Well, guess what? I do. If that's what it's going to take to prevent someone coming into my son's school and shooting that shit up, then yes, I want my son's school to look like a prison. McDonald's looks like a prison. I don't know what the McDonald's in your states and your towns look like, but the McDonald's in my states and my towns, I'm telling you right now, after they reconstructed all of them, they all are gray and brick. They look like prisons. So what's the difference? McDonald's don't even look pretty and colorful like how it used to back in the days. So Waltz, you lost me on that one. I don't even think I've ever heard Kamala Harris say that before. I don't think I've ever heard Vice President Kamala Harris say that before. Do you really want your kids going to a school that looks like a prison? Hell F yes, I do. If it's going to save his life. I don't want the doors to my son's high school wide open for anybody to walk in there. Not in this day and age. No, I do not. We have a problem in this country. And when you have a problem, you look for solutions. Patois Media, thank you for stopping by. Mama says, we don't have to agree on the abortion issue to comprehend that government has no business in women's bodies. And that's why the Republicans are going to have a really hard time on that issue. And they know it. They know it. You know what I'm saying? Vance knows it. Even Trump knows it, because even he had to kind of get a little soft on abortion. Yes, I want to get buzzed into my son's school. I want to get buzzed in. I want to have to show ID. I want cameras everywhere. Are you effing kidding me? Do you think it really bothers me or is going to hurt any of them kids' feelings if they got to go into a school through a metal detector? These are the times that you're living in. So you make adjustments based on the time and the environment that you are currently in. We have a mass shooting problem in this country. Instead of debating whether it's the guns or it's mental health, first of all, it's both. It's not one or the other. It's both. And then you mean to tell me You're going to sit on that stage and say to me, you don't want your kids going to a school that look like a prison? Sign me up. Where do I sign up at? Where do I sign up at? I want metal detectors. I want police officers. I want armed guards. All of that. Are you kidding me? Are we looking for an answer, or are we just talking just to talk? So Walt's made me upset with that one, if you can't tell. And then he starts talking about Finland, how Finland has all these guns and they don't have any mass shootings. Why is it that other countries don't have these mass shootings, you guys? Why is it just the United States? Why is it just here? What's the difference between us and them? Vance says, don't compare us to Finland. We have a higher mental health issue. So maybe we need to start investigating and researching the mental health issues in this country and figure out why are our mental health issues so much higher than that of other countries that don't have these problems. Why are we so stressed out? Why are we so depressed? Why are we so anxious? Why are we so upset? Why are we so violent? What is it about the United States? That's where they need to put the money at, into researching that shit. Get the top sociologists, psychologists, psychiatrists, get them all together and have them figure this shit out. Then Walt says he doesn't want to stigmatize mental health, but mental health is part of it. Do you not have to be a Looney Tune to load up a gun and go shoot up a grocery store? You mean to tell me that's not, mental health don't have nothing to do with that? You would have to be super ignorant to think that mental health equals violence. But you would also have to be ignorant to not understand that mental health has something to do with it. Because a sane person doesn't do these things. So it's not stigmatizing mental health. Good Lord. The moderator changes the subject. Poverty and drugs. Absolutely, landlord from Alabama. And we're living in different times. Absolutely, Mama Marie. Moderator changes the subject to high housing costs. We know that Kamala, we should know by now that she has a plan for this. She wants to give first-time homeowners all this money to help them put a down payment down on a house. I'm not sure where she's going to get the money from, but it's out there. You can look it up. It's on her website, The Opportunity Economy. We only have 30 days left, you guys. So get out there, start reading, start researching, start digging, start educating yourselves. Walt says he starts talking about the down payment assistance programs because he knows that people with stable housing will have stable jobs. And I think that's also vice versa. People with stable jobs will have stable housing. I think it goes both ways. And of course, he says we can't blame immigrants for everything, which we can't. We need to help kickstart this. And Vance says, I agree with you, Tim, but it's Kamala's fault. Massive increases in housing directly relates to massive rising in immigrants. Why sit around and do nothing while people find housing so unaffordable? So one of my commenters, I can't remember their name, talked about this. He talked about how in New York, more immigrants are finding housing than citizens of the United States. So I see where you can get that connection. So they're finding housing for immigrants quicker than they're finding housing for citizens, hardworking citizens who live here and were born here. And I get that. I do. But we're talking about buying houses. Last I checked, you got to show some ID to buy a house. You know what I'm saying? You got to have a pretty substantial amount of money to put down to buy a house. So these aren't the same illegals that we're talking about here. It just can't be true. They wouldn't even be able to do this. How would they be able to do this? Increased levels of migration is related to high housing problems, and it is Kamala's fault. This is a very interesting topic to me. The correlation between immigration and rising housing costs. And I actually want to do the work and figure out how to make that connection. And I'm going to do the work, and I'm going to figure that one out on my own. Because I mean, I have an idea in my head, but I want that raw data in order to be able to make an educated response to something like that the next time I hear somebody say something like that. So Vance says the administration, this is the administration's fault, basically. And Walt says, the president and the vice president don't make the laws, Congress does, which you don't hear that enough. We don't hear that enough. Like when Vance continuously says, Kamala, why don't you do something? You've been in the White House for 3.5 years. You do something. And it's like, do you think the vice president makes the laws? Health insurance, another good topic. We're almost done, guys. We're going to be out of here in a couple of minutes. We're almost done. Like I said, we're going over every question that was asked last night. So we will continue until we get to the end. So thank you for sticking and staying with me. If you watched the debate last night, let me know in the comments. Let me know how you feel about these topics that they covered last night. And also, please don't forget to, hit that thumbs up for your girl. You know what I'm saying? My name is UGoddess, by the way. Vance says under Trump, some of his family were able to get off of Medicaid and get private insurance for the very first time. Really, Vance? You want us to, just like you want us to believe that in the neighborhood you grew up in, you knew a lot of girls that had abortions. Now you want us to believe that your family members were on Medicaid and they got private insurance for the first time in their lives when Trump became president. Now you want me to believe that. And I just won't. I don't. But then again, I don't know your family, but that's my choice to say that I don't believe that. I think you're just saying that. He says there's been a 7% increase in prescription costs under Kamala. Donald Trump will be transparent with costs. He will implement regulations to cover the chronically ill. You don't have to argue. You don't have to agree with everything Trump says, but he worked in a bipartisan way to make sure Americans had affordable care. And this is where it's like, time out, Vance. Flag on the play. Flag on the play. Trump didn't work in a bipartisan way to make sure Americans had affordable care. He just couldn't get rid of Obamacare. And Obamacare is still in play to this day because he couldn't repeal it. He wanted to repeal it because he wanted to get rid of it so bad because he just didn't want to get in there into the White House and be like, this is Obama's brainchild. This was Obama's gift to America. I've got to find a way to get rid of it. And he couldn't do it. So now they found a way to twist that into he worked in a bipartisan way to make sure all Americans had affordable care. That's just not true. Trump tried really, really hard to get rid of Obamacare. So the Republicans have a hard time with this healthcare issue, just like they have a hard time with the abortion issue, because Trump literally does not have an answer to healthcare in America. Vance basically said, we have laws in place to protect people with pre-existing conditions. We'll go ahead for now. We'll just keep those in place. In other words, keep Obamacare. That's what's in place. Obamacare. Just admit it. Just say Obamacare works. I guess it works. I don't know. But you don't have nothing else. So just say you're going to keep it there. I know you don't like to admit it. Families, paid leave. Walt says Harris has made it a priority that big companies that are able to offer it need to offer it. If not, you'll stay home and you won't get a paycheck. And that's just not okay. Trump wants to bust the unions up. Trump is anti-union. So why is this important? Because a union is going to protect you for if and when you have to go on family leave. I'm sorry, paid leave or unpaid leave or extended leave from your job. Not just maternity and paternity leave, but any kind of leave. Your union will help you and make sure that you get paid, right? So if Trump is anti-union, that's why that's a really good talking point for the Walz Harris side. Um, Vance says a bipartisan solution is possible. And then again, I don't know why this guy is trying so hard, but the more he tries, the more he be effing up. Because then he says, I'm married to a beautiful corporate litigator who had access to family leave because she worked for a big employer. Why are you telling us that, man? Like, do you know how little of the population is going to be able to relate to that? And then he's saying we should have a family care model that makes choice possible. We want to promote choice because it's unacceptable that people don't have options. He didn't really answer the question. How are you, talk about families and the paid leave. How are you going to make sure that people, when they need to leave their job for an extended period of time, will still get paid and be able to go back to work when they're ready? And he tells us about his wife that's a big time attorney that got all this paid leave because she works for a big corporate employer. Childcare. Trump said, childcare is not even that expensive. What are you little poor brokies complaining about? Y'all so broke. Why are you crying about childcare? It don't even cost that much. Effing Trump, yo. Vance says, we'll make a lot of money by penalizing companies who outsource their labor. So he's basically saying this is the way we're going to help people with childcare costs, by raising the money by penalizing companies that outsource their labor. We'll use that money to help provide and pay for American leave and childcare costs. The reason why it's so expensive is because not enough people provide it. So now we're talking solution. I think that was probably one of the first solutions I heard all night. And I swear I'm not even exaggerating, and we're almost done. 5 more minutes and I'm done. That was an actual solution. Will it work? I don't know, but at least he has an idea. The moderator then changes the subject to the state of democracy. There was no widespread fraud, they say. The 2020 election was certified, they reminded him. And they said, Vance, will you now, today, accept the election results? And these people refuse to say that Trump lost the election in 2020. They just won't do it. So just stop asking. They're not going to do it, y'all. They're not going to say it. So he didn't say it. He said there were problems with the 2020 election. So in other words, we ain't lose. It was stolen from us. The same, idea that Trump has, and Vance is basically repeating that. He did say, however, that Trump did ask for a peaceful protest, January 6th. And he says we have a right to peacefully protest in the public square and debate these issues. And it's a threat to democracy in this country when there's censorship. And that is true. Censorship could be a threat to democracy, but that wasn't the question, sir. And then Walt says, sometimes you really want to win. Remember, he's a football coach. So he goes into Coach Tim mode. And he says, sometimes you really want to win, but you just got to shake hands and do everything you can to help the other side after a loss. And he says, a president's words matter. And by them not accepting defeat in 2020, it's tearing our country apart. A very powerful moment for Coach Tim right there. Vance said, what are you talking about? Trump gave up the power very peacefully on January 20th. What are you talking about? And Democrats do this too sometimes, so it's not just us. And Waltz looks at Vance like, all right, well, how about tell us now, did he lose or not? Did he lose or not? And Vance would not answer. Instead, he says there were problems with the election, and then he deflects to talking about Kamala and censorship on Facebook. Waltz then closes it out, the topic on the election, by saying, who are you going to vote for? The person who's going to honor democracy, like admit defeat, or the person who just wants to honor Donald Trump? The choice is yours, America. So that was a pretty, I say, thumbs up for Coach Tim in that moment. Because Vance just refuses to say what we all are, I think, wanting him to say, so that we can move past 2020 and move past January 6th. No offense to those who lost their lives, but we want to move past that topic, right? And we just can't move past it because they refuse to say that he lost the election. Closing statements, y'all. It's been an hour and 20 minutes. If you've been with me this whole time, I expected this to be about an hour. Actually, it has been about an hour because the first 10 minutes of this live, I wasn't even talking about the debate yet. So I sort of have been on task with what I wanted to do. If you've been with me for this entire hour and 20 minutes, I can't thank you enough. I really do appreciate you for rocking me. Thank you for the comments. Thank you. Even if you disagree with me, it's all good, baby. Baby, I promise. Closing statements. Waltz goes first. That's always a tricky decision to make. Do you want to go first and sort of throw the first blow? Or do you want to go last and be the last voice the people hear? I kind of like that one better. But Waltz goes first. Kamala gives us a different option. Vance says Trump makes people feel afraid. Harris is bringing us forward. You are the heart of this movement. It's a new day where everybody gets a chance to thrive. Vote for Cammie. And then Vance comes up and he says, I was raised by my grandmother. I'm sorry. They just can't stop. They can't help themselves. They really can't help themselves. But anyway, I was raised by my grandmother. Every American should be able to turn on their heat, but not everyone can. Thank you to Kamala Harris. You have the right to have food, a house, and a neighborhood with no fentanyl, but you don't because of Kamala Harris. I'm sorry. I mean, you guys, I'm not making this up, so it's okay for me to laugh because it's true that he said these things. We need change. We need a new direction. Vote for Donald Trump. And that was the end of the vice presidential debate. So my thoughts, and then we're going to end this, I swear on everything. And I would love to hear your thoughts as well. Vance was very polished, but he did not often tell the truth. That's kind of important. So we as voters or just interested peeps, we still need to fact check these people because they're not always telling us the truth. We still have to educate ourselves. We can't just let the clean, shiny, fancy man who talk good lead us away from the truth. Not saying that Waltz doesn't lie or that he's the better choice. I'm just saying that we should not let a fast talker get on the quickest path to our vote. So go out there and do what's right. If you're planning on voting in November, vote for whatever reason you feel is right for you. But I would say don't just take these politicians' words for it. Thank you for sticking with me for this long hour and 23 minutes. My name is UGoddess. I'm a Black girl in a blue state. Help me. Help me. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of y'all and your input. Patois Media, thank you so much for sticking with me this long. And please don't forget to leave a like on your way out the door. Peace and love, y'all.